The void stares back. The credits are rolling, the mics are recording. Gaze into the void with your hosts, Josh and Joey, as they discuss thoughts and questions surrounding visual, written, and interactive media steeped in cosmic horror.
Hey guys, welcome back to The Void Stares Back. I'm Joey.
I'm Josh.
Yeah, and we just finished watching episode 3 of True Detective Season 1.
Mm-hmm.
So pause it if you haven't seen it.
Go watch that.
Go watch that.
To absorb it.
Because we're going to spoil it a lot.
Yep.
And take some maybe deeper cuts. I don't know. I can't speak for me, let alone Josh, about where we're going to go with this.
Yeah.
But yes, this is my first time watching it.
Yep, Joe's experiencing the whole season for the first time, so...
Also, if it sounds strange, the way we're introing this, there's been a bit of a break, about a week, since I watched the second episode and the first. We watched those at the same time.
Yeah.
We're basically watching the rest of Season 1 in a single sitting.
We're just going to record in between.
Yeah, so all of this should be, from henceforth, it should be fresh.
Yeah,
for
and
me.
Pretty coherent between.
Yeah, wow.
So, hopefully... as coherent as
two madmen
matter.
Staring into the void. It can be, you know.
Yep.
So, all right. Yeah. I like this episode's writing more than the first two.
Yeah.
The dialogue was the dialogue and the cuts and the choices and in the storytelling are a lot cooler and we got our first cliffhanger.
We did.
Like serious, like the rest, the other cliffhangers were like, there's a painting on the wall. Also, we're not going to talk about that a whole lot in this episode. It's just a thing that happened.
Yep. It's just a small connector piece.
Yeah, it's more of a payoff than
a
cliffhanger. And the first episode didn't really have anything.
No, he just says,
right?
You better start asking the right questions.
Right, yeah, it's just sort of giving you the vibe of the show.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like just to pick up like a vibe out of this episode before we dig into the details. I like a lot of the self-referential lines about being bad men or whatever, because this is just like the whole show is going to be like this, I imagine, but it's just further reinforcement of the fact that these guys aren't great people.
No, they're not a hero.
Yeah,
right?
They're the anti-heroes or whatever you call it. Mm-hmm. And this is, McConaughey is just like completely aware of that fact and doesn't at any moment stray
was
from
at the time, still is, if not more now.
Yeah.
And
now he's convinced us.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it is nice to see that as I think the overarching theme. There weren't many standout moments in this one.
No.
That were like really punchy and like for like what I'm looking for out of the show,
Sure.
As like the guy who wants more like bigger picture questions to be unanswered and
Right.
because it's clearly like coming to a nice close in the story that we're being fed as to this part of the story is about to close, right? Like it's leading up to like what we understand. All right.
Sorry for the rustling.
Yeah, get yourself situated first.
I was just sitting on the cable there. All right.
Okay. Yeah, like this episode led up to what was I saying? What was I talking about?
This one's coming to a close.
This
closing the story that we've been fed since episode 1.
Yeah, where it's like, what is it that's supposed to be in question about? Because they lost the files, the hard files, so they're looking to. I mean, that's the story we're being fed. I don't know if that's truly what's happening, but they lost the files and they need the recap of what occurred.
Yeah.
And we're reaching that end. That's clearly not the story. There's more. We were told that there's more. There's a file with another dead girl who shouldn't be there, quote unquote. That whole thing. But but we're finally at the end of the story that people at the present day are sort of, the present day interviewers are
right.
We're catching up to them. They're in the future as far as the viewer is concerned.
Right.
And so I'm glad we're almost done because I want the rest. Because
Yeah.
that's the intriguing part where they're like, guess what? You thought you solved it? Get fucked. Check this out. Blah. Put the manila folder down really seriously and, check these images out. and I'm more interested in the story after that.
Sure.
Or behind it, maybe.
Yeah.
The cooler stuff. You threw me for a loop when you... so when we watch these episodes or the movies or anything, it's pretty much just two silent dudes.
Yeah.
Just letting themselves get enveloped. Mm-hmm. And this motherfucker got up in the middle of this episode and was like, excited to point something out. And failed to because it didn't come back up. And so now I was like thinking about it. And I was like,
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just like, what did he see that I missed? That's like, clearly you're watching it for the second time, or not from the second, but coming back to it and knowing like what to look for maybe.
Mm-hmm. No, it's something I know about that I don't think, like the average viewer without multiple views would see.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you let me into that universe for a moment where I was like, supposed to have seen something.
Do you want me to tell you what it was?
I don't really care about spoilers, all that. Like you could tell me.
It's not a spoiler. It's just something that,
like
it's just a detail.
Informs that scene better. Basically, the scene. Yeah. Well, the scene in question.
You set it up and
was when I forget the Marty, is that Marty's
Marty
house?
comes home to Cole Russ at his house, having just mowed his lawn
and is chatting with his wife. And he's like rolling this paper up like really meticulously, like a cigarette, but it's clearly not.
It's just a piece of paper.
It's just a piece of paper. But he's in the kitchen and there's like shit everywhere, and and then later you realize that there's some like something had happened at school with his daughter, and like there's a whole like there's an ambiance I wasn't aware of at the time of the scene that comes out after that scene.
Yeah, right.
That later that night of the day. But Josh in the middle of that scene before
Marty engages Rust
home.
at all. Yeah, like there's something there that actually you see when Marty comes into the room and he's hugging his girls. Mm-hmm. And then as he walks around to the table, he covers up this thing that you can see.
Sure.
One of the drawings on the little the little wall in between the living room there and the kitchen. One of the little girl's drawings is a spiral.
Okay.
So,
just cause.
Well, there it is. That's
great.
I just wanted to point out, like, hey, pay attention to this detail. There it is.
I mean, it wasn't that important because you didn't notice it your first watch, I imagine.
No, the first time, no. The second time, yes. I picked it up, and this is my third time.
Yeah, that's what you were saying last time.
So there was... and we know from episode 2 that Marty walked in on his girls to get him from dinner while he was arguing with Maggie, and after the girls like went past him out of their room to dinner, like they had arranged all their Ken dolls around a naked Barbie on the floor.
Right.
So that's 2 little snippets in
where like the overarching
his home
occurrence that seeps in.
From the case that he's working on.
And that like outside of the actual like what I missed, like the scene that I missed of the spiral on the wall was sort of pales in comparison to the idea that humans are prone to be within what am I trying to say? They're prone to be within like a cycle that they perpetuate themselves in pattern recognition, right? I mean, I think we've mentioned it briefly, and I don't remember. I talk about it often enough in my life that it could have been on the podcast. Sorry if it wasn't, but basically what I'm talking about is, no, we definitely talked about it. We talked about the number 23, and that movie is entirely about that. And and it's because he takes pause when he calls his girls in for dinner, and he looks at the Barbie doll scene.
Yeah.
And I think that holds less meaning than it's like a deja vu experience that the character has in that moment when he stares at it and he's like, he pauses, right? He stares at it for quite a while.
Yeah.
And he kind of double takes it, right? He stays on it for like a beat. I see that maybe in two parts, right? One is just like, why is this why is it like this? It's very strange. But also the conditions behind the evidence was building to the conversation with his daughter.
Right.
Because the Barbie was like half naked or something, and then like
completely
the Ken
naked,
doll was like on his back or
one Ken doll's on his knees.
Okay, yeah.
And they have the pants down, and then the other ones are standing around in a circle.
It was like a sexual thing as well as like re-referencing the original scene with the tree, and they did that a lot in the show. When, when like we talked about last episode, when McConaughey's character Russ walks out to that scene after they're visiting the family, and like the tree scene is very reminiscent to the crime scene that he walks past. The show is taking a lot of purposeful cinematic choices to just kind of put it in our heads subconsciously, and maybe the average viewer doesn't notice this and binges through it and just sort of gets enveloped, and it just speaks deeper to that the shots are character and like that sort of thing where there's just like further reinforcing this without like in our brains picking up on some of these things, and while there's a little bit of pseudoscience in that idea of like subconscious, like your subconscious mind had absorbed what it saw, but whether you're conscious, there's a little pseudoscience in like making claims like that. The real science of doing that is a lot more difficult than flashing an image or so I think it's mostly there as just like fuel for the fire of the rewatch, and having these questions causes people to go back and rewatch. They want to know deeper. Did I miss something? Was there a face in the woods? With things like you go back and you check these things when a movie captures you or when a show really drags you into its universe, filled with details and mystery. It's kind of like, and we're gonna constantly come back to this as a theme for the show. Not just because we're watching this, but in Bloodborne and Soulsborne games, every detail is very meticulous and important, and and that's not just from an obsessive point where it's like the fans are reading too deeply. Like Miyazaki, which is the brains of the operation, over those games, and specifically that one, has purposefully written it vague so that people can run away with it, right?
Has openly spoken about that too.
And that's very purposeful in his design of the lore and the history and the story being told at the time. But it's also like the details that allow the vagueness are very, very purposeful, and the language used is very purposeful, and the positioning of very minute details that might not, but usually don't matter in most video games. It's very much just set dressing for a lot of games. And for this, it's a part of the story. And that's something that great shows and movies do really well, where the cinematography is a vehicle for whatever. And not just like guy talks to dude in police,
it's not, it's never,
so it's important that it happens here.
It's not just visual appeal and
because like I'm also, like I even mentioned it last time, I'm also like a proponent of the idea that you can totally read too much into stuff, and like oftentimes like if a creator of some kind put in one detail, you're going to want to look to see if there are more, and oftentimes you're looking at like probably a 20% input from the creator, 30% input from the viewer, imposing purpose on something sometimes, and then a 50% just it didn't happen. Like they didn't think about that, and it just happens to be a good detail.
It's funny you bring that up, like the idea of like impressing your own vision on something.
It's a strong theme in here.
With Marty. Marty keeps telling Russ, like, you're obsessive, your tunnel vision, like you
and that's the first thing he says to the guy.
The very first thing at the crime scene.
It's just like, hey, you're already
too deep
building a narrative of what occurred. That's and that's a cool thing for Marty's character, right, to overcome, because it's something I've struggled with in my transition through life and just being the kind of person I am, is that there's a level at which I can like play a cocky character in life and just be like, this is truth as I speak it, and people, and it's unfortunate that I've gathered that because a lot of people believe in me, like the things I say as truth. So I usually don't take it in a nefarious way.
Right.
On purpose. It's usually for comedy that I like purposefully lie about something really obvious, but like the way I say it and like my past leads people to believe that I'm telling the truth or whatever. But to that point, it's like you can enter a feedback loop where you kind of know you're right. And then maybe that's negative for your life. Yeah. But Marty's experience with Russ is evident of that, like his what's the word now? Like that persona that Russ has of that is that Marty is slowly being converted due to his like, and maybe for him it's like something he's resisting and seeing come true each time that Russ says something or makes a prediction and it turns out to be true. Yeah. He's never been wrong in a lot of the situations that Marty originally challenges him. Right. That that he can't be certain, those sorts of things. It's like a slow conversion of Marty to being like, he's always right, and like if you start to think that way about, somebody, then you could be a force for bad when they aren't right or something like that, and so that'll be cool to watch develop as well, because this whole episode has kind of been about the payoff of Russ being right. And,
there's a lot of, Rust gives us a lot of dialogue in this one about his view on the world.
A little bit. He reinforces a lot of the vague things he said before. Yeah. When presented with really specific situations. Yeah, right. Nothing he said has been a new ideology from him, which is good, right? Like consistency-wise.
Yeah, it's all just developing the same thing that we've been fed from the beginning.
Right. Marty's just like, hey, Russ, you're fucked up. How do you feel about this? And then he's just like, it's all meaningless, and religion is a construct about people who are frail and futilely, giving off, letting go of their sins onto some greater being. And I'm like, you can't argue with that. You're just dull and sad, so I don't,
I like his little, like, oh, it's me, I'm so important.
Yeah. And I've had that conversation with you, which is why, like, I talk about my beliefs in alignment with that subject matter, and like, I only have a problem with organized religion because it gets to that place. Like, it's like people who are just like, I deserve this, even if they're not saying that. They don't.
Well, right. Like he says, like it's such a silly sense of entitlement.
Right. Yeah. Like it's not necessarily people actually saying me. I. But that's actually what is truly occurring when you assume that you're some chosen people that get to receive some benefit for a minimal amount of work or whatever it is, or and that it's free to anybody despite how awful they are as a person. Yeah. Because that was like a big thing that he says at home, that is something I believe deeper than any conviction to any theistic belief or otherwise, is that when he says that the people who need a morale system given to them by a religious doctrine are awful people, right? Like the people, because he says that when they're watching the preacher go off, he says, Marty's like, people need that, it makes them good people or whatever, and then Russ is just like, if that's what people need to be good, decent human beings, they're awful human beings. Yeah. That's actually what they are, and I want them out in the open so I can catch them. Is kind of like, his own little like demigod complex or whatever you might call that, kind of comes out there. But that's like actually pretty solidly how I feel about that situation. Like in the real world, even when religion was like rampant and 100%, and people got murdered when they didn't believe or or hid it and all that, the past and like the Crusades and early slavery of the Jews and and the fight for Jerusalem that goes on to this day to some extent, and that sort of a thing. Like there's an underlying truth in that reality, is that people in those environments, like heavy religious environments, like the Deep South environment that they're illustrating in the show, is that people believe that that's where morality comes from. And even if you're in a like perfectly saturated religious community where you never experience anyone who isn't, that's still not where your morality comes from. Like, people can blame morality on, I say blame, maybe that's the wrong word, but they can deem it responsible of a belief system like that doctrine, but it actually just comes from society. Yeah. Because back in the day, it was totally fine to murder those non-believers. You know, that was not morally questionable. Right. It just was. It's what you did. You know, and there's tons of examples like that. Like even in the Bible, it's like anybody who eats raw meat after 2 o'clock on a Tuesday gets stoned to death. And people are like, yeah, that's right. That's it. You know, obviously that's ludicrous what I just said, but it's not far from some of the weird norms that people in the past has sort of lived under. And so morality isn't a thing that's divined by a doctrine, even when people divine their own from that. You know, that's not actually what's supporting that belief system. It's just the building blocks of society. That's why religious fanatics are deemed crazy. Yeah. All their morals come from some sort of twisted belief in something, but they don't align with society. Mm-hmm. So you can't truly correlate those things. So that's another like cool thing that isn't really anti-religion. Yeah. That he sort of says and, you know, makes reference to that. Right. I've always kind of talked about, because that's often an argument for religion, that it makes you a good person. Right. And not all religions are like Christianity, where they're all based on repentance. You know, not all of them are like that. Yeah. Where there's some great sin that must be overcome or something like that. And some of them are. Yeah. There's a good amount. Yeah. But like Norse gods and stuff. Yeah. Wasn't really about that. No. Maybe there was one god who cared about that. Yeah. It wasn't like an overarching theme of their religious beliefs or whatever. And so yeah, I don't know. It's always nice to hear that come up in content, because it's kind of something people don't really think about. Yeah. And I just like talking about it. Backing up, but staying on the topic of his ideologies about the world. I was mostly done with that idea. No, yeah. That's, but we haven't really yet discussed his connection to the major theme of our show, which is Lovecraft and stuff, and like one of the Russ's specifically, you mean? Yes, right. Sure. And so like where I'm going with this is, you know, one of the major beats of Lovecraft is the dread comes from man's almost like revelation that he is meaningless in the universe, right? Like that's the big takeaway from Lovecraft. Yeah, and I mean Russ is becoming like, and he's already like accepted that. Yeah, he's like a cult leader priest. He's like the top. He's the one who he has eyes and understands that it's all meaningless, you know, but for a different reason. Right, but like it's interesting to see, because like in normal stories in the Lovecraftian vein, like when a man, you know, or when a character comes to this revelation, they usually go mad, and that's where the horror lies and all that. Yeah, and he's not. I mean, the people around him think he's mad in a sense. You know, like you're. I mean, he is right. Up. Like he's, you know, is insomniac, obsessive. Yeah, like super rough around the edges human being already. So like he's been driven to that level of societal referential madness. Right, but people don't dig deeper because they don't. Yeah, but he's not like, except for Marty. You know, it's not like he's shown any signs of not coming to grips with this idea that he holds, right? Sure. So it's really interesting to see a main character in a story like this that is the opposite of what usually those stories end like. Well, there's a cool juxtaposition there too, because you see his past and his present self, and then the story that we're experiencing is how they come together to meet. You know, you're following the timeline where you see him completely deranged, hair grown out, hick, drinks all day, doesn't care what he looks like, you know, like he's totally abandoned all of those like norms or whatever. That he just, you know, the routine. He doesn't shave anymore. He doesn't do these things that he did every day. And now he's doing like it's like every traditional mastermind villain in like a horror context, like Outlast, which is a video game series.
Yep.
There's often a maniac who speaks through like a societal norm madness, but with a very calm tone.
Yeah.
Because it's their normal, and those people are the extra psychopaths who are just like, oh, this guy's really screwed up. He's just cutting people up and killing and murdering, but he's just talking about how it's important.
Yeah.
But very calmly, and it doesn't. The thing he's doing doesn't instill fear in himself or guilt or even excitement.
Yeah.
He's just doing it very mundanely, and that's very scary to most normal people. Which is how Russ is talking about some of these awful things.
Yeah. It's like
the whole time
we need to all kill ourselves as a society.
Yeah,
and we mean nothing.
And then he even
the things you believe in aren't worth believing in because it's like it's all a fairy tale.
He even takes a moment to like scare the detectives when he starts talking about how he felt about all of the dead people that he saw when he got obsessive about the case.
Right. Yeah.
He talks about how there's a moment right before they die, and he's imposing his own self ideology on in a still image of the relaxed, muscular face of someone who can no longer control their expression when they die.
Right.
They're like, people don't often die with expressions burned into their face. That's not
right. Yeah.
That's a thing that's said a lot, I think, in movies and stuff.
Yeah.
That's why you crap yourself when you die, because your muscles all relax because you can't control them anymore. You're dead.
Yep.
And whilst there's some variance in that, it's not often as detailed as facial expressions.
Right.
So he's imposing this idea that he has about sweet release over relaxed people. It was a nice little touch to shake our the viewer's opinion of him. It's like, okay, he's a little crazy. That sort of a moment.
Mm-hmm. That ties into there's a movie, and I don't think that we'll watch it for this because it doesn't truly fit the show.
Okay.
But so I'll just make mention of it.
Sure.
It's a movie called Martyrs.
Okay.
That my girlfriend and I watched, and she's in the room with us, so she's giving me wide eyes from the corner of the room. It definitely was it was the first, I think, that I'll say off the deep end horror movies I ever watched.
In what way?
Well, I watched a few, right? But
a few.
Just a few horror movies in my day before.
Oh, before this moment.
Before this moment, and my girlfriend and I, she's really into horror, so I started watching a lot of B horror and all this stuff. And
it's like our relationship now.
Yeah.
Where I'm finally getting into some of this stuff and generally avoided it.
So I watched more and more, and then I kind of ran with it, and to the point where I started looking up what are the worst movies. What are movies banned in certain countries because you can't watch them, right?
Yeah, I know this story to some extent.
And so I found this movie, Martyrs. It's a French film. There's an American remake now that I think changes the story quite a bit. But in the French one, I'll just give the briefest synopsis. It's about a girl who was captive and escaped, and then grew up with a friend who had a similar experience of being tortured as a child, and had these phantoms that basically caused her to kill herself. And the friend, they were at another house. They're at a stranger's home. I don't really remember the circumstances as to why, because this is early on in the film. And the girl kills herself, being just submitting herself to this demon that has haunted her from her childhood. The friend gets kidnapped and put in a basement and tortured by a group of people who are in search of true cosmic contact, which is the part that made me think that maybe it'd be for the show, but there's not enough there that I don't think it's worth.
It just happens to be the driving force behind some of the horror.
They are looking for. They've discovered that in the last moments of true martyrdom, people see God, right? Or they see the beyond.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a look in their eyes.
That's
so these
actually
people,
true.
Right, and these people torture this girl to the point where they skin her alive and just try to push her to her very, very limits, right?
Right.
And she sees it. like there's this moment.
Yeah.
And the lady who's running the secret society that does this to people, like goes up and like asks her, what do you see? And the girl whispers, but you don't hear it. What she says. And then the movie ends. So like, and I
of course, that's how you mask a bad movie right there.
Well, and the movie's gotten actually like some pretty big critical acclaim as far as horror movies go.
Oh sure, yeah, it's pretty scary.
But and it's more scary in like a very psychological way throughout the whole thing, like because you actually watch this girl just get just horrifically tortured, right? And so it's not like jump scary, it's not creature scary.
Yeah.
It's a little creature scary in the beginning because you're like, man, there's the demon thing that haunts the other girl,
right?
And you think that's kind of the whole path that the movie's gonna go down, and that's like only the first like 20-30 minutes.
It's the setup, buddy.
Yeah,
get ready.
It was a pretty intense setup, and then all of a sudden that part's just gone, and now you're just watching this horrific tale. But like that idea of where Rust is talking about, like that final moment, like they've accepted death, kind of tied into this movie where it's these people see something beyond the reality that they've known.
Sure, and I mean, like that's actually a thing that exists in real life, because when you're experiencing death or immense pain or whatever, your brain's like, no, none of this, and then just forces in tons and tons of chemical reactions, and you see things and
hallucinate or
some of your because it's less about like the actual physiological organs malfunctioning as much as it's the brain being overloaded with sensory information due to the influx of chemicals coming from all areas, and all of the synapses just trying to fire to figure out how to not make us die in this moment, and and that sort of self-preservation thing that you just have kind of that every
really intense fight or flight, and
exactly, and there's even like there's a part of the brain, I don't know if it has like an official name, but there's a part of the brain called, like, I'm already going to butcher it because I don't remember it, but it's basically the center of your brain where religious belief comes from, otherworldly experience, and so like often very heavily religious people under the MRI and under the scans have this very repeatably part of their amygdala, which is kind of the little walnut-sized core of your brain where all your emotion is generated. There's like an area right off the top of that that repeatedly lights up when people have religious experience. And you can stimulate that part of the brain and do all these fancy things to like get people to react. And it's like certain offshoot scientists are trying to like solve that by like jolting, your brain, and not anything harmful, but from what I understand, just to see what the response it elicits from someone who isn't dying or who isn't experiencing some otherworldly thing, and seeing what they have to say about their experience through that. And so there is like, often a part of your brain, despite where it's located, that's allocated to these beliefs, and they're often spread out. But religion and emotion are often very heavily tied to one another, which is why it makes sense that you find it around there, maybe. But that's definitely like a thing that happens, right? When people are dying and they're hooked up to these scans, which we have a number of them. I don't actually know any hard details about how many people get hooked up to the MRI whilst dying, but there are certain areas that spike, and the amygdala is a huge one because it's responsible for your chemical release and that sort of a thing, and it's sort of the gatekeeper.
There's an entire species in Bloodborne named after it. So.
So
So
amygdalas,
we'll
but
discover that later.
And so there, there's interesting ties to that in the real world, and like whether it means there's any sort of like, important value for True Detective. Like, I think they just sort of touch on these sorts of ideas for now. If they build upon that, I'll be interested to see, what Russ interprets as, that being relatively, important later, if it ever comes up, or if it's just further development for his whack ideas about the reality that he considers an illusion and all these little details about, because like his story sort of like wanes back and forth, where he'll lean on the idea that he's talking about how like you can stop pretending we all share this illusion that we're just a dream of a person, and when we die we realize that it's meaningless, and you can let go, and all that sort of stuff, and but then on the other hand talks about some greater purpose of bad men versus bad men are important, and like these are real things in the reality that he is denying, and like but taking part in. And it goes back to episode 1, I think, or 2, where he's like, talks about his struggle with participating in the reality that he so deems as worthless.
Yeah, I think that's episode 1.
Yeah.
Marty asked him, well, how do you get up in the morning? He's like, it's my programming. We're just programmed to go take part in this experience together.
So he has a lot of conflicting concepts that sort of touch on the same ideas of like selflessness and purposelessness and that sort of a thing. And well, some of that is like something I would consider true, to the extent that he takes it as clearly madness. Right. Like he's just keeping it all together so he doesn't look mad and doesn't act like too mad,
right.
And like he goes on a date in this episode, and like that's not in his character, and he clearly doesn't want to be there the whole time for the most part, and he's reluctantly answering the questions asked to him, and that sort of a thing, and he only perks up when the question's interesting, and for the most part, and never makes eye contact, which is pretty normal for him for the most part. He's like inches from Marty's face a lot in this episode, where he's like, this is important, I gotta whisper. And he whispers to him, and but never stares him in the eyes when he does it. He's always looking off in the middle distance, like a lunatic. And it's just a matter of how long he can keep it under control. And we're about to get to Nam or whatever, and gunfights, and this crazy naked Post Malone guy in a gas mask with his tats and
Reggie Ledoux.
Yeah, just a actual lunatic hotboxing himself with gas masks and drugged out of his mind, carrying machetes on his own property or whatever.
When the end of this episode, I'm sure this was the way for a lot of viewers, when this aired on TV and stuff. But like, that last final sequence, he's like walking out, like the end of every dream, there's a monster, and like they show him, and I was like, that's when I perked up. Like, and I was already engaged, like very engaged, right? But I was just like, oh, like, here we go.
Yeah, I actually didn't. I had the opposite reaction.
Oh,
actually.
Really?
I was just like holding back, the chuckle, because that guy looked like a fucking joke. Like, like it's like, but the way that McConaughey delivers the line is so fucking serious.
Yeah.
And like, there's a monster and it's super scary. Oh, look, he's wearing a diaper and a gas mask. Take him seriously. And but it's like, no, dude. Are you looking at the same thing? You saw the guy.
Yeah.
You're future McConaughey.
Yeah.
And like, clearly it's just leading up to the events surrounding the guy.
Right.
But the guy's a fucking joke. He doesn't look intimidating at all. He's like just a chunky dude with he looks like a guy who's posing as a threat, right? He's just like, I'm so tough because I bought a gas mask on Amazon for $13.99. Got it prime shipped to my house next day. This machete, my dad gave it to me. Like, I don't know. Like, the guy's just not very intimidating looking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm excited to see why he's important and what unfolds after they encounter him and all that fun stuff. But that's everything that went through my head. I'm like, this guy looks like a joke.
Yeah.
Any other random notes that
I don't think so. Not that. I mean,
they just further reinforce a lot of stuff, like the whole insomnia
you're gonna experience
scene.
A lot of that in this. It's just like developing and just like pounding in harder and harder all these ideologies that these folks have, and like
I meant like with like Russ's character and stuff. And like episode 1, late episode 1, early episode 2-ish, already knew Marty or whatever was a scumbag, who just was in denial about how he felt, or was just spending a lot of his mental energy and time masking it from trying to keep all of his plates spinning, you know.
Yep.
And
he's already like now
he's losing it.
Now he's unraveling quicker than Rust is. So.
Well, Russ unraveled back in the day.
Yeah,
Well, drunken, you know. Russ done been unraveled.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it's it isn't new, which is less exciting as a viewer. But it does, like, you know, it is a reinforcement of everything, and like moments where it's like you already knew this about Russ, but we're gonna show it to you in this lens, right? Like he goes to the church. We already knew he believed all that stuff, and then he talks about it in that realm.
Yeah.
You put him in this situation, he talks about it in that realm or whatever. And but it's always the same, right? Like it's always the same belief system that gets applied to these situations.
Yeah.
Less exciting for me, but I can understand why this is, because this is like a more heady thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I already sort of watched just anything I watch with that level of detail.
Sure.
Maybe for the worst. I don't know. It just allows you to not enjoy certain kinds of movies as easily. Like where it's just like, this is meant to be fun. Why are you picking it apart? You know,
You're that guy.
Yeah, I don't spend time telling you the movies you like are shit if you're into something I'm not into. So at least I'm not the preachy version of that guy, but I definitely, like, you know, don't get satisfaction from the Expendables or whatever other than choreography, which is, it's an American shot film. So throw choreography out the window because they're going to cut around it. Like, you know. So yeah, there's some level of enjoyment out of different things, but often it's not the narrative, it's not the experience.
Yeah.
It's just like, you wouldn't just spend a half hour unwinding watching people get their heads blowed off. I'm like, that's not how you unwind, you psychopath, you crazy gun-toting American. That does not sound like how you unwind, right? But no, I do get it. I do get why those are enjoyable to a lot of people, but I just, I'm not. That's not my brand.
Yeah. No.
But you already know I don't even watch a lot of movies. So.
Right.
Movies in general are not. This is about. They're not the avenue I take. I'm not even taking it with these movies.
No,
I'm not calm when I watch these. I'm like, you're watching my facial expressions.
Yeah.
Because you know I'm not. You're like, oh, look at him. He's reacting. He's learning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There wasn't any huge, like you said earlier, there weren't any huge beats toward the theming of our podcast, and like there were more in episode 2 than any of the other episodes.
Yeah.
Episode 1, the closest you get is the idea that there's like ritualistic stuff going on. Yeah. You know, with the crime scene. Mm-hmm. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of nods to that idea where there's more questions than answers. Yeah. Except that we're being tugged along the path that, you know, of mystery and, you know, lack of understanding that the detectives have. Right. And we only become let into the fold when they do, except for moments when, you know, like the diary last episode when, you know, we know references that they wouldn't, perhaps. I clearly didn't mention it. It exists in this time.
It does. You know, this is the 90s. So
right. Like, it's been around for a hot minute.
Chambers and Lovecraft work has been around for two or three decades at this point. So
it's been public domain. Yeah. You know, I actually don't remember how long it takes.
I think that's
to enter into
that's
public
what I was
domain.
Saying. I think it's been public domain for a couple decades at this point because it was Lovecraft's work was written in the 30s, and Chambers was in years before that.
The mark is once they die. It's a period of time measured.
Died in 37,
right. But it's a measure of time after their death, not after the production.
Right, but that's what I mean. Like, you know, this is 60 years after it was written.
Right.
So
it exists.
It exists and is more common knowledge, you know, now than So,
and whether they even touch on it in this reality, in this fiction or whatever, you know, who knows? It could just be the thing that the writers are just kind of tapping into, as opposed to saying like, oh, they'll find it later when they read the book or they read the poem or the play or whatever.
Right.
But yeah.
Cool.
I clearly missed a couple things that were the supernatural, like the children being some weird conduit to the supernatural spiral gods of Louisiana or whatever. like
the spiral gods of Louisiana.
You know those good old boys.
System.
Those good old boys, and spiral gods. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's some subtleties that are clearly lost on me from just experiencing it in order, or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, no, I mean, I'm still heavily enjoying the show.
Cool.
Not, criticisms and,
Yeah. Well,
and that sort of a thing aside. It's very well made, and you can't go wrong with two big hit actors like that.
And this is some of their best work on both their ends, I feel, comparative to the other stuff. So.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't watch movies. I can't actually speak to
coming from a guy who's seen both of them in several things.
Yeah.
This feels like their best work to me.
Sure.
So
I think I like these characters, and that's like as actors, I'm sure this isn't that far ahead, leaps and bounds from other things they've acted as. But subject matter and like detail put into characters, because obviously it's different when you make an 8-hour movie like this is.
Yeah.
Versus a 2-hour movie, like you have time to develop the character other than act out what you assume its past was like based on the writer's inklings. Like this is something where you can like be along for the ride and develop those different idiosyncrasies that people gain when they go through crazy things like this. Like the fact that Marty's unraveling is exponential because each moment that he loses control, his character is going to want to just try and grab all the control that he can and then fail to hold it all and drop more things. And, one plate falls, they all fall, and that sort of a thing. So what that does to him later is evident in his interviews when he gets caught up in moments.
Yeah, he just kind of freezes and zones out, thinking about all these things
about the details that we get to
went
see
wrong.
That he's probably not describing in the, as fine detail in the...
well, even the interviews are like, Marty, like he is very clearly checked out in some.
And it's usually in the moments that he doesn't want to share, like the infidelity details,
right? Or him busting in on a guy, and So,
but yeah, I mean, like the actors being given characters like that, I think is very much a two-man job. Like the actors are clearly capable of doing these kinds of characters, so I don't really attribute it to something that they've gotten like supremely better at so that they can perform at some sort of level, inherently there's skill there. It's just about what you're handed to a big extent, I think.
It's definitely a two-way street.
Absolutely.
It's whatever they're handed, and then however they apply their skills to develop that, and what they choose to do with that.
That's why I'm always careful when people come to me and they're like, this movie was great, but this guy didn't act really well in it. I'm like, well, but was that really the fault of
the actor?
The actor, who knows? Like, maybe, like, totally happens, I'm sure. But I think, you can only, there's a ceiling with the character, right? Like, and these ceilings are very high.
It's easier for me to pick that stuff out too when I watch movies. I'm like, yeah, they're doing the best they can because that line was garbage.
Right, They delivered that line, that crappy line, as best as they could.
So, I very rarely fault the actors in situations like that.
I do know that's like a popular thing though, right? Like a lot of people really
do.
Put the onus on the
did
actor.
Okay. And it's like, well, the movie was probably garbage. Like, they're clearly skilled. That's why they were chosen.
Thing.
Like, they have a big name.
Right. Well, sometimes, you get the story of the actor phoning it in, that sort of a thing.
Sure.
Not that common, I think.
Yeah, no.
Definitely blown out of proportion. But, like, what I was going to say is, like, you get a lot of really big actor names in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Yeah.
Not the greatest movies.
Yeah. The first one's good. After that, it's kind of a landslide.
It's weird when Johnny Depp's quirky character is the best character.
Yeah.
Just because he's just been developed long enough and Depp can act that role convincingly. And the others have to hang out with the silly pirate guy who gets serious sometimes, maybe. Yeah. Who knows? He's kind of quirky. He falls over and
that character was the only reason they ever kept making sequels.
Yeah.
It was clearly novel and fun in the first one, and good.
Good
He
enough.
It could
have been it.
Yeah, he wasn't completely over the top the way they kept making him more and more and more
now
quirky.
He's just a bit of a clown.
Yeah.
Like still within the realm of the universe
Yes.
and all that stuff. But like,
right, but it's
clearly
he just got more exaggerated.
It's like the Marvel effect, and I talk about this being someone who doesn't watch Marvel movies, but like where they went mad and they got really successful. When I say mad, I don't mean angry. I'll get to it. I'm sorry. With Guardians.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's such a fun action, but it's hilarious. And then they're like, people like to laugh. Put comedy in every movie ever.
Right.
And then they're just like,
this has been definitely a big complaint amongst my circles of friends too, who love all the Marvel movies. But yeah, it's just getting.
I'm like the only
hand.
one of yours who doesn't.
I think and I mean there are a lot of people who are like they'll pick and choose them. Tired of it, you know.
I've been tired for a while.
Yeah,
but that's just that was whispered off of a me from
from Abby back there
off mic.
Yeah, but yeah, like my dad told me, you know, he's like, I don't care anymore. Yeah, you know, and but he goes to see them anyways because like deep down he's like, I guess I gotta know.
It's an abusive relationship, right?
Yeah, it is.
This one will be the one that turns around and is just a good movie.
Well, or it's just like, I just want it to be over, so like, I'm gonna go see Infinity War, right? Like, this is the end.
Well,
this is what it's built to.
That's definitely
but after that, I don't care.
Like, Marvel is selling tickets not just on like the silly things they're doing with their characters and stuff, and the interconnectivity of the universe, which I think is an overblown gimmick. But they're doing it because they're just riding on the cultural phenomena of it, right? Like, it's like, I gotta be there for the ride, right? I can't watch all those movies at one go, which is why I'm totally checked out, because I'm not going back and watching like 17 Captain Americas and 32 Avenger movies and whatever, you know, just to catch up to the new Infinity War movie. Yeah. So that I know who that weird character who dies was from. Like, I don't, you know, and I wasn't into the comics, so there's nothing there for me.
Yeah, you don't have any initial investment.
No investment. Like, the only ones I'm there for is one, and I'm probably not going to see that for a long time, which is Into the Spider-Verse. Like, that's and the Homecoming, maybe. Those are the only ones that I'm like, those are the superhero movies I'll maybe go see. Yeah, someday when they're on DVD in the dollar bin.
I really did enjoy Infinity War as a film. And obviously there's...
Well, that's because they had stakes, right? Like,
I was going to say, and my investment obviously through the whole franchise has led to that moment. So like, it's something that I've waited for, you know? Yeah. But beyond that, some of my favorite ones are just individual. It's the only one of its kind. Like, I really like Doctor Strange, you know? And there's Doctor Strange doesn't...
That's one I've seen, actually.
...tie into a lot of other stuff. They have to tie it in a little bit.
Well, that's the nice thing about Doctor Strange. He doesn't need to. He can just fucking show up wherever he needs.
Right, but I like his individual story more than I've enjoyed most of the Marvel MCU.
That Benedict Cumberbatch?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I also just like all of the circumstances and kind of universe surrounding the character of Doctor Strange, and much more than anything else in the MCU.
Yeah, I didn't really like the movie very much, to be honest.
It's not the best one, but as a...
The special
themes
effects
and everything in that one are, fantastic.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It's Inception with magic.
Except, like, way more detailed and, like, the work... Like, they talk about The Matrix.
Yeah.
Weird tangent.
Okay.
It'll make sense in a second. They talk about the time when The Matrix was made and how it was like such a massive budget for that movie. Yeah. And how they did it was insane because, you know, they just showed up out of nowhere, these directors or whatever.
Yeah, the Wachowskis.
Yeah, and they're like, we're going to make this crazy thing. Yeah. And then the sequels came out and they ate up 98 to 99% of the resources for CG work in Hollywood, period. And no one could use CG and had to wait for them to finish, like, the Mr. Smith fights. And like, all these, like, which are not great to look at now. They did not age well.
No, but at the time.
Ate up all those resources, which is just kind of a interesting historical thing to think about in terms of, like, what? Who could do things like that at all? Like, what animators and what artists could even create stuff like that?
Right. And now the credits at the end of Infinity War run as long as The Matrix, the movie, did. Yeah,
exactly.
Of just the list of animators.
Of all the people. And it kind of goes to, like, Lord of the Rings when...
when Peter Jackson did that. Like,
and Ian Surian would talk about how he started to make the Hobbit movies now. Mm-hmm. And he was just really sad to make them because it's just a bunch of green shots because he's the only tall person in that. So all of his scenes are alone.
Right.
They're all against green screen so that they can superimpose him over normal actors to make them look shorter and all this stuff. And like the reason he got into acting, it kind of died there. And like he talks about some of those things. And so I don't know. It's a tough thing to argue for the direction that like the MCU and that sort of phenomena in cinema sort of has taken pretty much everywhere. Everybody who's like gonna try and compete is kind of there, and like, so you get a lot of these weird gems that aren't trying to do that I think hit on more marks than the ones who are just like, we could do that too, and they try to do it, like especially DC. They're so far behind, they're just trying to copy the beats of they're like, we could do interconnected universe, and Superman looks great in the shot, doesn't he? And it's like, no, he doesn't actually. That's not what I want from your movie. And, I don't know. It's kind of sad. This is what I want. I want 8-hour movies, and I want them written really well, and with really interesting characters that I'm all for and all about. Like, I don't like Marty as a character. Like, if I met him as a person in real life, I wouldn't want to have small talk with him. Like, you know, like I don't give a shit about him as a person, but I'm totally invested. You know, like I'm ready to watch him burn out, fail, because all his setup is sort of doomed to make that happen. And and you just don't get that with Superman. Or any of these other superficial characters that are kind of out there. That's why I really pick and choose my movies now. I think more than anything. Like the only movie that I went out of my way to see recently was I Love Dog.
Which I still haven't seen.
So good. And this comes from a person who had no idea that the guy who made it, the director, had such a pedigree.
Wes Anderson. It has a very specific type of film that he makes, and he's really well known for it.
And he does it really well. And like, so you're either with him or against him. You know, like that sort of a thing. I haven't seen any of his other films before or after, and so I went into that not knowing that. Like, I didn't watch that movie as a Wes Anderson fan. I watched it as a movie fan. Well, I can't say that. I don't know what I watched it as, but I watched it and I really enjoyed it. Is the point. But it's the only movie. Out of the past 3 years, maybe,
that you like made an effort
that I went to see of my own volition and intent. Like I've seen the Star Wars movies, but that's because a lot of my friends, you know, want me to go. In some cases, I didn't even buy the ticket. You know, it was like, So there's that. I don't know, it took us like 6 episodes, but now you know my history in TV and movies is shallow. So everything I've said before this, if you've given it any level of respect, you can
just throw that
redact that. You can you can now continue to listen to my words with a grain of salt. Or more.
Welcome to another episode of Joey Finds Cinema.
Welcome to our next episode of Why Are You Caring About Anything This Guy Has to Say About Movies? This series, episode 3. That's what you're here for. That's what you're here for. You got to keep us grounded in reality. You're Marty, and I'm.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to be Marty.
I don't. Nobody wants to be Marty or us. I don't. You know, this is a lose-lose. All right, we should get.
I think that wraps up this episode.
We rambled.
Yep, we got a lot of.
I rambled.
We got a lot of stuff to intake here.
You allowed me to ramble.
That's all right.
You took part very little in the rambling.
It's true. I usually,
Usually, it's supposed to be a hint to someone to Rust over here, Rusty.
Just shut up, okay? Stop saying things like you smell a psychosphere and the Matrix had a big budget and that Marvel is garbage and people around here don't want to hear that, okay?
I don't use as many $10 words as you do. All right.
You sound panicked, Joey.
No, I'm so calm. Listen to the calmness in my voice. You can practically see my hand shaking through the microphone.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. We're about to watch episode 4.
Yeah, go watch that. We'll remind you at the beginning of the next episode. But
yeah, if you haven't. But please do.
Be ready.
Because we'll have lots to discuss. So.
Spoilers. Not that this episode didn't take like 12 years.
I was going to say.
All right, okay.
There might be more relevant things to discuss.
I'm excited. So. It better be. It's like the conclusion of a big moment. So
Spoilers, it's filler.
We lied. We're sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening, yeah?
Yep,
And,
until next time.
See you later.
This episode was recorded on January 28th, 2019. Our next episode, about True Detective episode 4, will air on Saturday, December 28th, 2019.
Awesome. If I was just so focused.
Yeah, I was too. I was like, is he going to say it? Am I going to say it?
If you would like to follow us on our social medias, we have a Twitter and a YouTube channel. And on that YouTube channel, you can also find a Let's Play series where we dabble in the same sort of theme within video gaming. So if that interests you and you want to see our lovely faces, you can find us there. You can find all of our content on our website at thevoidstaresback.com. And you can contact us through that. All the links to all of this will be in the description below.
We also have one other project we are currently in, and that is called Cardboard on Tap, where we play board games live on Twitch. We share that with a few other folks, very dear friends of ours. So please come chat with us, hang out if that piques your interest at all.
Yeah, every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Yeah, it's a good time. I think that about wraps that up. So.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for listening.